In this video,
Real special adventure.
In this week's birding adventure, we pause our big year challenge and travel to a destination that might just hold the best birding in Europe. The island of Lesvos in Greece.
Let's go on holiday.
We left our trusty transit van at home and headed to Manchester Airport. And after getting through baggage and security surprisingly quickly, we had a drink and some food and then headed onto the plane for the nearly 4-hour journey. We arrived at our hotel after 11 PM and settled down, excited about what birding wonders awaited us the following morning.
Good morning. It's the first morning, it's early, and as you know, I usually go out for a morning walk as Kaylee gets ready. But someone else was a little bit excited this morning. There she is. She's had a lifer already.
Yes, Kaylee beat me to the first lifer. Perching on a washing line, there was a red-rumped swallow. This wasn't a lifer for me, as I managed to see one in North Wales in November last year. But for Kaylee, this was her first lifer of the trip. And what a great view we had. This species were joined by our normal swallows, of which some were nesting in the hotel itself. Getting back though to the estuary in front of the hotel, there were some very obvious birds. These were greater flamingos, and there were plenty of them. As Kaylee was scanning amongst the flamingos, I noticed above my head on a post a corn bunting. This species, which isn't particularly common in the UK and is quite localised, is, as we were to find, very common here. Kaylee soon noticed a large black shape that was flying in to join the flamingos. This is a black stork. And it wasn't alone, it was soon joined by a second bird. These two, seemingly flying in slow motion, eventually landed in the distance past the flamingos. We had seen this species in Gambia in the far distance, so it was nice to get a reasonable view. And things started getting even better as my first lifer showed up, a Kentish plover. This species that no longer breed in the UK have visited, and we've tried to find one once in Somerset at Burnham-on-Sea and failed. Luckily, this species is quite numerous here, and we were super happy to get this on our life list. As we wandered up the lane, we noticed another bird that appeared to be quite numerous here, the crested lark. This again being a species we'd seen in Gambia in small numbers on a beach, but here there were loads of them. Still just stood on the lane in front of our hotel, we were sung at by another corn bunting. We decided now to head a little bit down the lane towards the beach. Noticing en route that our Kentish plover we'd previously seen had now been joined by a flock of little stint, and this by far being the most we've seen of this species in one place at one time. Arriving at the absurdly pretty beach, we noticed some birds flying down to the sand. These were swallows that appeared to be picking up either nesting material or food out of the sand. These were soon joined by groups of house martins too. After hearing some noise out in the bay, we noticed a couple of terns flying around. It did take us a little while to figure out what they were, as they were quite dark, but these are whiskered tern, another lifer for Kaylee, who's now beating me 3-1. Before we headed to breakfast, we decided to walk slightly in the other direction, towards a bridge that goes over the river, en route getting yet another lifer for both of us, an eastern olivaceous warbler that was sat on a twig singing its heart out. Whilst walking along the bridge, we noticed more red-rumped swallows that were picking up mud as nesting material, finding out later that they actually nested under the bridge itself. In the nearby water there was a few turtles. We're not sure if these are Balkan pond turtles or European pond turtles, so if you know, feel free to comment.
Just from a couple of hours before breakfast, we've picked up a couple of lifers already, which is mental, and we've discerned that both crested lark and corn bunting are super common. Breakfast time, I think.
Whilst walking out of the hotel after breakfast, we noticed some enormous ants. We're guessing these may be carpenter ants, but again, feel free to comment if you know. We now had to walk 15 minutes into Scala Colonis to hire a car, which admittedly I was a little anxious about.
Hey folks, we hired a car, which was a bit nerve-wracking. First time we've driven on that side of the car. So we've come quite close. Yeah, gear stick is in the wrong place. So I've come to Metochi, I think it's called Metochi Lake. It's probably a bit late in the day for this, but
it's stunning.
But it's cool. We've seen a load of beetles a minute ago, although I struggled to get them on film. Let's see what else is here. Stick with us, this is amazing.
Arriving at this very pretty piece of water, we were greeted by a singing reed warbler. We had read before coming here that this little lake was an excellent place to see crakes early in the morning, and although it was into the afternoon now, we were hoping we might be lucky enough to get a glimpse of a target species of ours, the little crake. And with the help of another birder that was present, we spotted one, this one being a male, with a purpley grey front and a brown back. This handsome individual didn't show itself for too long though. After a brief time feeding out in the open, it retreated back into the reed bed. But yet another lifer for both of us, and this streak of lifers continued as we noticed a small black bird fly in. When it landed at the end of the lake, we found out it was a pygmy cormorant, a species that isn't common in Lesvos, but apparently the numbers are increasing here, and a bird we would see a couple more times on our visit. On our walk back towards the car, we saw another little crake, the slightly duller coloured female of the species. This individual jumped across the reed bed in front of us. As we headed away from the lake, past the numerous turtles, we got a flyover from a lovely marsh harrier.
Hey folks, this lake was great. Even we came at lunchtime. It's kind of midday-ish now, but amazing. We got a couple of lifers. What did we get?
Got little crake
and pygmy cormorant. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I don't know where we're going now. Stick with us. Let's find out.
We walked along some of the tracks near Metochi, soon seeing some birds of prey flying above us. The first one here being a buzzard. Further up the road, we saw another bird of prey in the distance. We didn't know at the time what it was, but after some further investigation, we found out it was a short-toed snake eagle. And yes, that's another lifer for both of us, and luckily we get to see this species a little closer later in our visit. Walking along a track, we found another small lake, where we heard some unusual noises.
Hey folks, I don't know if you can hear this behind me, but apparently these are frogs. Have a listen.
Sharp-eyed Kaylee noticed a shape at the back of the lake through all the heat haze. This was a black-crowned night heron, a lovely addition to our day's sightings.
Our first day of wandering continues. We've just seen a night heron, although very distant and heat hazy, on a pond where there was some extremely loud frogs and a couple of mystery birds of prey that I'm going to check out. Anyway, we're going to head back to the car to rest our legs because I've walked miles. So stick with us, let's see what else we do.
Before heading for some lunch, we took a quick trip to Colony Salt Pans, a very famous area around here for birds. And with a track at one side of the salt pans that you can drive down, you can bird from the car, which was great for our aching legs. On a channel on this side of the salt pans, there were numerous black-winged stilt, some of them very, very close. And one wading bird that in the UK is a pretty scarce passage migrant, but appears to be super common here, the wood sandpiper. We then drove to the other side of the salt pans to a bird hide to have a look there.
Hey folks, so we've just thought we'd have a quick drive round the salt pans here in Colony before we go and grab some food. And we found a Dalmatian pelican from the hide, which is a lifer. And I'm trying to creep up on it to try and get a slightly better picture because it was in heat haze. So stay with us. Apologies about the wind.
We managed to get significantly closer to it, but as soon as I got the camera on it, it flew. Luckily, it flew right in front of us, giving us great views of this enormous bird. Although the Dalmatian pelican isn't the only pelican in Europe, it's most certainly the biggest. In fact, it's the largest pelican species in the world, and among the heaviest flying birds too. This individual flew past us and landed in a channel next to the road. Over the moon, to get yet another lifer on our list, we drove round to one of the other hides, where amongst the grey herons, little egrets and numerous flamingos, Kaylee spotted in one of the fields a very distant white stork. By now though, we were hungry and we headed to one of the restaurants in Scala Colonis for some wonderful seafood. Following this lovely meal and resting our legs a bit, we headed down to a nearby river, where someone had sighted a Balon's crake, which is pretty scarce for Lesvos. We parked up and walked down the track towards the river ford, where the crake had been seen, en route getting views of an eastern olivaceous warbler. When we got to the ford, we noticed we weren't the only people after this crake. There were numerous birders here present, with a couple of them having brief views of the Balon's crake, but apparently it wasn't really being very obliging. Regardless, we stuck around for a little bit to see if it showed up again. There were plenty of other birds here feeding around the shallow water, with reed warblers and sedge warblers in the reeds, and on the bank a few yellow wagtails, including this black-headed subspecies. After a short time of waiting, a crake did come into sight, but unfortunately it wasn't the Balon's crake. This was a female little crake, which was reasonably confiding, coming out in the open every so often, giving us great views. Unfortunately though, it was getting late and we were getting bitten by bugs, so we headed back to the hotel before it got dark. The following morning we got up early with the plan to go to Mitochi Lake again, as we'd enjoyed it so much and wanted to see what other birds showed there early in the morning. And getting up early really paid off, as en route down the lanes we spotted Kaylee's favourite bird, the Woodchat shrike. This individual, I believe is a female, tell me if I'm wrong, was initially on the top of a tree and then flew to a high branch, giving us excellent views of this stunning little hunter. You may remember from a couple of videos ago, we went to try and see one of this species in East Sussex in the UK and unfortunately failed. So these views kind of made up for that, and this was the first shrike of our trip, but not for long.
Well, we just had a super exciting moment. Babe, tell him.
We just had Woodchat shrike and my shrike was over there.
Like from the car. Yesterday we were like, no, we can't find any shrikes. And then,
Crazy.
like, we've come out early this morning thinking, oh, you've not had enough sleep. That was that was mentally cool. We saw the Woodchat shrike, Kaylee spotted it, and then I was reversing the car into a spot, and in the tree next to me, there was a max shrike, which is like...
We came a long way to see that.
Yeah.
Well, I did anyway.
That's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Now this bird is really something special, the masked shrike. This is the species that made Kaylee want to visit Lesvos, and this individual didn't disappoint. This one, I think again, is a female, and she obligingly sat in a tree whilst I took a video of her, eventually flying off behind some bushes. This species is a bit of a speciality on the island, and in Europe is restricted to the southeast. So, what an amazing bird. And obviously Kaylee was over the moon, as was I. What a great start to the morning. Now let's see what Mitochi Lake produces today. This time as we walked up to the lake, the first bird we saw was a great reed warbler, a species I'd only seen twice and one that Kaylee had only seen once. This one was singing loudly in the reed bed. As we walked round we noticed we weren't the only people with the idea of getting up early and coming here. There were loads of birders present. As we headed towards the first group of birders, we had a flyover from a purple heron, a species we've recently seen in the UK. As we got chatting to the first birder, he'd had some sightings of another bird we'd never seen before, the spotted crake. Unfortunately though, it disappeared into the reed bed, but fortunately not for too long. We patiently waited, seeing a shape moving around in the reeds, and it finally came out on full show, giving us awesome views of this yet another lifer. This is a species that does breed in the UK, but in very small numbers, maybe only a couple of dozen pairs, and a species we've never seen. This individual being on show for a good couple of minutes before it vanished back into the reed bed. This though wasn't the only crake we saw today. we saw the male little crake again, and got even better views than the previous day, with this male really showing well. This species summers here in Lesvos and then migrates to Africa in winter. Things here only got better, with us seeing another bird we were hoping to see, the little bittern. Although this isn't a lifer, as we saw one really briefly in Gambia flying, this is the first time we've got a good look of this small bittern, and the first time I've ever had one in the camera. So this is, as my friend Jordan from Bright Eyed Birding YouTube channel calls, a camera lifer. This individual, although pretty camouflaged, was reasonably visible even with the naked eye. It stayed reasonably still for most of the time, although occasionally pecking at coots and moorhens as they passed, eventually changing position to a lower part of the reed bed. Walking further up the path, we spotted another bird we'd seen many times in Gambia, the squacko heron, a great bird now to see in Europe, with this individual on full show in front of the reed bed preening. It was now time to head back towards the car as we had breakfast to eat, but on the way getting a lovely view of a female little crake having a bath in the shallow water. Mitochi Lake had seriously produced this morning, and it had been really worth getting up early. On the way to breakfast, we discussed coming back on one morning later on in the week. After a lovely breakfast in the sun, we headed to somewhere that I think is called Aviary Forest, a place where we were hoping to find at least one very special species.
Hey folks, so we had a hell of a morning before breakfast. We saw it was incredible. Spotted crake, little crake, squacko heron, little bittern, shrikes, it was mental. And now we've come to a wood I can't pronounce, like some woodland.
It's nothing unusual. You can't pronounce it anyway.
Somewhere hoping to find short-toed tree creeper, maybe even a creeper's nuthatch, which is a bit of a speciality. So we're going to go for a wander, so stick with us.
Walking into this very beautiful forest, we heard lots of bird song, most of it seemingly coming from hundreds of chaffinches that seemed to be here present. We walked on a track which brought us to a viewpoint where the views were breathtaking. And although the scenery was admittedly stunning, we hadn't found any of our target species, and we'd only seen chaffinches and great tits. We had heard a turtle dove but been unable to find it. We did spot this singing serin in a tree above our heads. Now we decided to try another path, and soon we heard one of our target species, the creeper's nuthatch. After a reasonable amount of time scanning through any movement in the trees, Kaylee spotted one on a distant tree. Although the sighting was brief and quite distant, this is an extremely exciting bird.
We just had a ever so brief view of a creeper's nuthatch, which is like a really important bird really for us, and it was distant and ever so brief. Kaylee had a slightly better view than me because I wandered off and shouldn't have.
I found it, that's why.
She found it. We're gonna just have a few more minutes, see if we can find it, and Kaylee wants to see a short-toed tree creeper too, so
I'm desperate.
we'll see what we can find.
As much as we tried, we couldn't find the short-toed tree creeper. When we got to the car park, we had a little look in one of the fields across the road, and this gave Kaylee another lifer, an eastern subalpine warbler, this one being a handsome male singing away. I had seen this bird once before on our trip to Malta, but that was a juvenile bird that was blown in by a storm. So I was equally as over the moon to get this fantastic sighting.
Hey folks, we didn't find the short-toed tree creeper for Kaylee, unfortunately, although we heard one. We got one other very brief view of the creeper's nuthatch, but that's enough. And we just literally walked over the road and got sung at by a subalpine warbler, which is a lifer. It's a lifer for Kaylee, which is excellent. So we're going to do a bit of exploring. Stay with us.
Although we did head back in the direction of our hotel, we stopped off a few times en route. One of these stop-offs was by a marsh, which was really lively with birds, with us getting our closest views yet of the amazing black stork. As we walked along the edges of the marsh, on the opposite side of the road were some fields and a fence line, and on this fence line was many birds perched up, including a number of yellow wagtails. We even spotted a Woodchat. In the distance there was a number of bee-eaters hunting over the fields, with some of them landing on the telegraph wires. These are super colourful birds and a real joy to watch. As we walked further, the bee-eaters came closer, now hawking over the marsh itself. At one point, 2 of them landed, seemingly quite precariously, on a tree in front of us. And although they didn't stay for long, whilst they were there, they gave us fantastic views of these super colourful birds. Further up the path, we got amazing and close views of greater flamingos. And although these birds were common here and we'd seen plenty of them, we hadn't seen them this close on this trip. So it was quite amazing to watch these super cool pink birds feeding. Amongst the flamingos, there was some wading birds too, including greenshank and also Kentish plover, another bird we'd seen the previous day, but quite distantly. By now though, it was pretty much time for lunch, so we headed back in the direction of Scala Colonis. When we arrived back, it looked like the flamingos had followed us, with large flocks flying about in front of our hotel. As we walked down for lunch, we spotted this singing greenfinch, and had to stop due to a farmer moving his sheep. After another delicious lunch, we jumped in the car and travelled this time a little bit west round the coast, to a little chapel on a hill, which apparently the area surrounding it is good for birds. When we arrived, we were immediately struck by the view. This is something that was repeated throughout the holiday, so please forgive me if I ramble on about the stunning scenery. The birds were here too though, and we picked up a lifer pretty quick. This time in the shape of an eastern black-eared wheatear. The first individual being spotted by Kaylee, this one being a female that was carrying nesting material. We soon though found the male, who was very showy, initially standing on a rock directly in front of us, and as we walked along the path would pop up every now and then and fly up in the air singing his heart out. And the lifers just kept on coming, with the next one being exciting for me. This was a Kretschmar's bunting. Now, I'm a big fan of the bunting family anyway, but this one is pretty special. It's one that I saw in a book as a child and only imagined seeing. So, seeing this one flying onto some barbed wire in front of me was genuinely exciting. Although, wasn't the only bunting we saw here. Just as we were about to leave, I heard a sound from inside a bush. And it was a sound I recognised, the awesome Searle bunting. This species that in the UK is very localised was a very welcome sight. It had a grub or worm or something in its mouth, but was calling from inside a bush. Luckily, I was able to find an angle with no vegetation in the way, giving us great views of this bunting. We did notice on the steps towards the chapel a very unusual looking harvestman that was black with a white stripe. This had been a lovely little evening drive out, but now we had to head back in the direction of the hotel, as it soon would be going dark. Stopping once en route for an ultra confiding corn bunting that was sat on a post by the side of the road. We now got our dinner and settled down for the night, as we had big plans for the next day. We woke up, had our breakfast, and then headed out into the mountains to the west of the island. Our destination was a place called Ipsalou Monastery, which apparently is the highest point on that part of the island. When we arrived, it was very windy, but we set out on a path that climbs up towards the monastery itself. We were here specifically for a couple of target species. Firstly, a bit of a speciality on the island, the Cinereus bunting, I'm hoping I pronounced that right, and the second was blue rock thrush, one of the only 2 birds that Kaylee's seen that I haven't. On the path we saw both northern wheatear and eastern black-eared wheatear. We also saw lizards, Kaylee saw a Persian squirrel, and we heard many other birds too. Pretty soon we heard one of our target species, or at least my target species, the blue rock thrush, and after a bit of scanning up the slopes, we saw one sat on the top of a crag. This is a species Kaylee'd seen before me. She remembered seeing one before she was a birder on a trip to Portugal. I, up till now, hadn't seen one, even having travelled to Malta twice, where it's their national bird. So I was over the moon to see this lovely blue singing spectacle. We then headed right up the slopes towards the monastery itself. This is an absolutely stunning building and was founded in about 800 AD. Although in the following centuries it's been raided multiple times by the Ottomans and there's been a big fire which destroyed part of the building, it is still standing and remains the oldest monastery on the island.
Getting to the top was a bit taxing. It's quite a steep slope, but we're going to head down now. We haven't seen that much other than the blue rock thrush and a few black-eared wheaties and such. We've heard quite a lot. Although we've just bumped into another birder who went the opposite direction up the slope and saw quite a bit, so that's reasonably encouraging. Let's hope these birds are still there.
After having a quick mooch round, we headed down the slope on the other side of the monastery and kept an eye out, as apparently our other target species, the cinereous bunting, had been seen. After having a brief view of an Orphean warbler, which unfortunately we didn't get on film, we found the bunting we were after. This pretty yellow-headed bunting is a rare species in Europe, with Lesvos being one of its strongholds. And this wonderful individual gave us brief but great views of this stunning species. As well as the fantastic cinereous bunting, we also spotted a seal bunting sat on a rock in front of us. Absolutely over the moon with this fantastic sighting, we walked further down the hill towards the car park. But soon, laser-focused Kaylee spotted another bird that was a lifer, our rock nuthatch. This fantastic individual, although distant, kept coming back to the same spot, where we believe it may have a nest. We now moved on towards the coast, stopping a couple of times on the roads where we spotted other birds. One of them being yet another lifer, and again pretty distant, but still, there's another one for our list. The Isabelline wheatear. This individual was sat on a rock singing. We sat in the car and watched it for a while, and then headed towards where we were going to have our lunch, a village on the west coast called Sigree, where we found a wonderful seafood restaurant. We sat down and had a great meal, planning our next move. Our plan was to go to a place called Sigree Cheese Sanatorium, which apparently is a good spot for a number of species. We were looking forward to it, until we saw the road. We buckled up and headed slowly down the rubble track, in a hire car that was already on its last legs, en route seeing multiple lesser kestrel, which are lifers for Kaylee. After about 5 nail-biting minutes of driving, we parked up. I checked the tyres were still intact, and then we set out to see what was around. Although there was a little bit of birdsong in the air, it was reasonably quiet. This was probably due to the time of day. We did see some birds though, including a young stonechat, and a few warblers too, like this whitethroat, and an eastern Orphean warbler. We'd seen this species briefly at Ypsilu Monastery, and it was good to get it on film, and add it as a lifer on our list, as we forgot to before. It was this point Kaylee got a very brief view of a bird she was hoping to see here.
Hey folks, we're in a place called Sigree Cheese Sanatorium, which is...
Where Kaylee's losing her sanity.
Well, yeah, Kaylee's losing her sanity. We've come for one of a bird that I've seen that Kaylee hasn't, she's desperate to see, which is the golden oriole. We've heard them today, but not seen them.
I've seen it in flight.
And the one showed up, another bird is with us, and then it disappeared, and then he ran to come and get her, and it disappeared again, and then she saw it fly.
That's not good enough though, because it still leaves a question mark, because I don't actually know 100% if it was it. Although there's not many birds out there that are bright yellow, but besides the point.
There is that. So we're going to stick around and hope it shows again.
We're not moving now.
We're going to be here all day probably.
We did stick around for a while, and although we didn't get another sighting of the golden oriole, we came to realise this place was excellent for raptors, with views of all sorts of species. We saw more lesser kestrels, we even got a distant view of an Eleonora's falcon, a lifer for both of us. Unfortunately though, we didn't get that one on film. The star of the show though here was the short-toed snake eagles. These were flying over and getting really close at times, giving us exceptional views. As their name suggests, the short-toed snake eagle does eat snakes, and lizards too. Although these birds were showing wonderfully, and we saw a few over the week we were here, this species is apparently in steep decline in Europe. This is generally due to changes in agriculture and land use. Regardless, these incredible raptors gave us quite a show here today. As well as these amazing eagles, we did get views of a marsh harrier, which admittedly is a species I wasn't expecting to see in this environment. Nevertheless, a nice sighting. By now, we'd been here for quite a while, and still no more sightings of the golden oriole. And as we wanted to get back to the other side of the island before it went dark, we had to leave. Although, later in the week we would return to try and settle the score. But now we headed tentatively back on the rubble track, heading back towards Sigree and Tarmac, and ultimately back to our hotel. As we got back, it was slowly going dark and some of the birds were coming into roost, including this flock of Spanish sparrows that was behind our hotel. We now went for a meal and then settled down for the night, looking forward to the next day's birding, but that will be in part 2 next Thursday. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and please press the notification bell. And please tune in next week for the second part of this awesome Greek birding adventure.